Oh,
Welcome to the
there
show,
you are.
everybody. I'm here. I'm here, fam.
So what's up, everybody? Welcome to
Sorry about that.
another segment of the TruthWire. I'm here with my co-host,
Craig Pasta Jardula.
who's still getting ready, apparently.
Fam, you're supposed to say
It
it's
is
truth time at the Truth Wire.
it is 9 o'clock, just 6 minutes past 9 o'clock Moscow time. So for me, it is the evening. And so yeah, that's it's been a day. It's been a hectic day. I have some crazy news. I'm not going to say it yet, but I'll be doing some craziness. Um really good things coming forward, but yeah, we'll talk about that next time, fam. The next time we're live together. Um
Got it.
but fam,
Yes.
how are you?
Good. There's a little craziness going on over here. Hi to Fred Edwards over there hanging on out and all our loved ones. Ruth, we love you. Robbie, thank you guys so much. Bad Wolf. Yeah, I mean, I got the craziness of taking care of mom. We brought mom home a couple days ago. She's still bedridden and can't really put together words. She's still trying to talk, but a sense of relief coming in her own home, which is a cool thing. So I'm just like running back and forth. I got family members in town. I'm making some mozzarella in carrozza, so I have the marinada on the stove. I'm coordinating with all the nurses and the therapist and the aides. So that's my life right now. But yeah, still keeping it going. A lot of fun stuff, fam. I'm going to be 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. I'm going to be one of the co-hosts of Due Dissidence. I'm going to fill in for Russell while he's on assignment. And then Wednesday, I got the show. And I don't know what's going on Thursday. So maybe I think Matt will be back from his assignment and we'll be able to do that. And then we'll be back together, me and you, this Friday. And I'm working on an awesome guest for this Friday. Not going to tell you who it is yet, fam, because I haven't heard. But also, you're not the only one with surprises today.
Wow. So we'll see what happens, and sounds good. And I want to wish, obviously, Pasta Shonda Massa, who
Yes.
really let out some good news a few days ago that she has so far seen the tumors that she had respond to the treatment she was undergoing, which is really good. And yeah, Shanda's been really phenomenal in terms of supporting independent media, and so we were all rooting for her. So hopefully she continues to kick cancer's ass, for lack of a better term. And yeah, everybody send her all the support you can if you haven't already. And yeah, that's our fam right there. But a lot to cover today. Well, not a lot, but a lot has been happening in this area. So fam, if you're ready, we can get to it. Okay, I guess Pasta had to exit the stream for a moment. So I'm going to start, Jayme. Let's get started with what we were going to talk about, and Pasta can jump in when he needs to. So, obviously, the internet wasn't going to escape the Elon Musk drama that really has been unfolding for a while, but hit this boiling point, right? It hit this boiling point now with the revelations from several outlets, including the lovely and cherished Daily Mail. Now, I didn't really want to cover this because to me, this is more like TMZ/gossip, but there are some important things here that I did want to point out. And I don't know if I put one of the links in there, and Pasta has a lot to say about this. So I kind of want to wait for him for what he wrote, but I want to share something. I want to share a link that I have here of the the connections of Israel in all of this. So I want to share that. I'm going to pull it up from WikiLeaks. I'm going to put that in the folder. I don't think it's there, but I'm going to put it in right now at the end. It's at the very end, Jayme, so you can just bring it in. And I just put it in there. I want to talk about this because I think this is the angle that I'm hitting on this, right? This is kind of the sphere of influence that we've been talking about, not just on this show, but in general, what we've seen in geopolitics. And so this is from WikiLeaks. They posted this article from the Times of Israel, and they say it's the Musk Autolus Ashley St. Clair is managed by a PR strategist, Brian Glicklich, who previously received $598,000 from Israeli security company Mer Security and Communication Systems, which at the time reportedly was to help Congo avoid human rights sanctions. And St. Clair says she is Jewish. So let's read the little picture here that they put up. And it says the filings show that Mayer paid $360,000 to Adnan Jalil, a former congressional liaison for Trump's campaign, $250,000 to the firm of Nancy Miller, the wife of the Trump campaign advisor and former CIA chief James Wolseley and Jr., and $680,000 to the firm of the former Congressman Robert L. Livingston, an early Trump endorser, and $598,000 to the firm of Brian Glicklich, who has represented Trump's allies, including Breitbart News and Rush Limbaugh. So it once again shows that the Trump circle, the Elon circle, is completely, entirely Zionist embedded and
compromised.
Yeah, and that says everything. I mean, if the Adelson didn't do it, if the Palantir, PayPal Mafia, Peter Thiel connections didn't do it, if the connections to just all of Silicon Valley and all of the money that is also Zionist entity related, and then you have, of course, the Greater Israel expansion and the attempts that we're going to talk about later to use Saudi Arabia to isolate Iran from all of this. You see those connections, and this Ashley St. Clair, which I want you to talk about, right? I want you to lead on this. She is Jewish. She has been Jewish, but she comes from being a cam girl / sex worker. And you know, it's very weird, the whole thing that's happening. And I know your angle is also talking about the transhumanism that obviously Elon Musk is a huge part of. I mean, to have 13 children, only 12 of them conceived like natural, is
unnatural.
Unnatural. Yeah. 12 of them conceived of natural, one only natural, is kind of crazy for Elon and the rest of his supporters and the Trump conservative contingent that lead by berating single mothers, which Ashley St. Clair did constantly, berating any sort of you know, what welfare queens and stuff, you know, talking about family dynamics and traditional values and Christianity and all of that. And this isn't against anybody's religion. Like, I have friends across the religious spectrum, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whatever you are. Like, this is about the hypocrisy for me, the hypocrisy of a lot of these people who espouse the most traditional values being the ones that end up being just completely just insane when it comes to this stuff. And that's also another point. So the hypocrisy, the transhumanism, and the Zionist connections, I think, are worth pointing out more than like the dramatics of it all. Pasta, go ahead.
All right, fam, check your internet. Jayme, make sure your internet's working good too as well. I think, Fiorella, that's yours, but you're really, really blurry on the YouTubes and whatnot. Yeah, let's put up some of this stuff as we go into Zafi. We'll check her internet. So let's start with the Christian values, right? Because the hypocrisy, that's one of the things that we have to talk about. I think very clearly, Fee pointed out the IDF and the Israeli Zionist connections. They're all over the place. You can't deny them. It's funny because we were also talking at the same time, we were talking about the influence. And this is why Donald Trump and anybody who's connected to him are never going to be about free speech, right? You know, we had this, that's what they're parading at. You had J.D. Vance going to Europe, wagging his finger, acting like they're now the models of free speech. Meanwhile, they are compromised from on high from the Zionist nation, every single level, whether it be, you know, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, Sam Bondi, Peter Hegseth. These are hardcore ardent Zionists, not to mention that a lot of them are billionaires too as well. millionaires and billionaires that he's been appointing all around him, like people, including people like Howard Lutnick. But let's put this first part up too as well, because you hear so many of these conservative Christians, these theocrats, these people I talk about on quite a bit, who, you know, they think that you need to have a value system, that you can't be an atheist, fam, because you don't have a value system to go up. Go ahead and throw that up, Jayme. Okay, so WikiLeaks exposes mother of Elon Musk's new child, Ashley St. Clair, has been managed by the PR strategist Brian Glick.
This is what we just went over.
So this is all the stuff we went over right here. That solidifies that. Go to the next one. I think we're getting the wrong ones over here. All right, the one that says Christian values. Get up the one that says Christian values. We're working a little bit backwards. All right.
Yeah.
The epitome of Republican hypocritical values. Ashley St. Clair is 26. Elon is 53. They probably use IVF, which we'll go into that. And this is her second baby out of wedlock. Yet all the Christians are congratulating her. She preached about family values. She used to be be known, I think, as a sex laptop girl. And you can see that, you know, once again, the only people who can destroy the toxic wave of feminism is women. Bring back family values. Make monogamy great again. And you have people also, fam, like Alex Jones kind of saying, good for you, Elon Musk, and people pouting him on the back. I mean, this is so hypocritical. In your face, ladies and gentlemen. Elon Musk is not to be trusted. His connections to DARPA, his connections to the WEF, I mean, it's all over the board. He wants to put a Neuralink in your head. And we're also going to get into it. Let's put up the other part. So now we have the hypocrisy, right? We check that box. We have the IDF. We check that box. We understand the compromisation. I mean, I did mention, fam, that, you know, J.D. Vance is going around to Europe and talking about all this free speech. Yet we have no free speech over here. We have no mechanism to see what's going on. It's just that during the Twitter files, and this is what the Twitter files was all about. You want to talk about using Matt Taibbi as a useful idiot, you know, the screenshots, whatnot. At the end of the day, when the Twitter values were done, it was all about, oh, it's just conservatives that are being censored and demonetized. No, it's all about the Zionist grip on media across the board. People like Elon Musk, who don't have to show his platform's transparency. That's not an open source system. So how do we know what voices are being lifted? How do we know which ones are being silenced? You can see that both Elon Musk, just like I talked about RFK, fam, are compromised. So the last part I think we have to point out about this, but unless you have any sayings on this too as well, because you wanted to make a point to talk about the hypocrisy, right? That's coming from the right. And why is it important to point that out, fam, in your mind, the hypocrisy?
Well, just all I want to say is quickly, just imagine if Ashley St. Clair was a like Latina, like, you know, 20-something-year-old Democrat who, I don't know, had a relationship with one of these, you know, Democratic elites of sorts, right? Or did something, or you, because I constantly see this whole area of the right. It's not everybody, but it's some of them talk about, you know, the fact that a lot of Black Americans are from single homes and the family structure has devalued, and they talk about having they have these babies out of wedlock, and, you know, it's just really bad, and we need to stop paying for these people that are staying at home, not working, and, you know, that sort of thing. But if it's one of their own doing it, and if it's one of their own from the ideological party doing it, and she's doing it in a way that's, I would say, like an elite type of prostitution, because essentially, to me, this is what that is. I don't care how they wrap it around and decorate it. If you're going to have Elon Musk's baby, and then you're going to talk about, you know, signing agreements and having these arrangements, and you're going to be flown out and housed into whatever, you're having relations based on a transaction, right? This isn't like I'm in love with you. This is like a transactional relationship, which is fine if that's what you want, but let's not pretend it's anything else. And let's not pretend that the right wouldn't be screaming and completely berating this girl if she was somebody else, if she was not a Republican Party operative, if she wasn't part of their team. And that's the hypocrisy that I think follows the right when it comes to free speech, when it comes to talking about other religious aspects, where, you know, for example, Muslim religion is looked in a very negative manner, but Christianity and Zionism overall is akin. They have a kinship, and they're fine. These Abrahamic religions, etc. So
Yeah.
there's that hypocrisy is, I think, what I want to point out to tell people and let people know that you're not, when you're still talking about the Democrats versus the Republicans, you're really not seeing the whole picture, because this is a uniparty. And it's this type of hypocrisy that perpetuates the idea that there's a difference when there really isn't.
Fam, come out and come back in because you're still blurry as can be. And I'll read the IVF real quick thing. We got to talk about the third part, this transhumanist mentality. I mean, how different is Elon Musk when he's constantly, you know, using IVF, right? And I think that's they were saying that they could choose within the embryos different types of intelligence, whatnot. They can make the, you know, they can try to cater or doctor up a child, an embryo, to be what it wants. So let's take a quick look in this as Jayme has it up. The Musk family engineering. Family engineering. I mean, this is everything supposedly you were supposed to be against. We were all about nationalism, not globalism. Well, this guy lives in the global realm, and I can't believe that you guys are still following this. And once again, there's no push and play. It's almost like it's done. Hands are wiped. We're gone. We're done. We don't have to talk about transparency anymore. It was the Republicans, the conservatives that were being censored. Now we have free speech and we can move on. That's not the case. They're still doing it, and they're doing it with people like the T Labs, the Derek Broses, the AM Wake Ups, my old show. This show, we're still demonetized, censored. This is going on because when you're speaking anti-establishment, where you don't play team sports, forget about it. And shame on those people like the Tim Cass, the Benny Johnsons, the Ian Miles Strongs, all these people who pretend to be journalists. They're not. They're cheerleaders. They're compromised. Advances in science and technology coupled with modern medicine has impacted the way in which we look at life. Reproduction is not an exception. It is no secret that the most prolific innovator of the planet, on the planet, Elon Musk, took an engineering approach to reproduction. And his first 5 boys came into this world via IVF. And the last girl was delivered using a surrogate mother. The Tesla mogul and his former wife, author Justine Wilson, welcomed son Nevada Alexander Musk in 2002. Nevada died of a sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS, at only 10 weeks. After losing their firstborn, Musk and Wilson turned to IVF to grow their family. She gave birth to 2 sons, Griffin and Xavier Musk, in April 2004. The couple also used IVF to welcome triplet sons Kai, Saxton, and Damien in January 2006. The way they're just naming their kids, I mean, these are just some, I'm sorry, off-the-wall people. Later on, Musk began dating singer Grimes, who gave birth to their son on son X, AEX 1011 Roman numerals. I mean, who does that shit? I mean, that's just creepy. Early in March, Grimes revealed that she and SpaceX founder had welcomed their first daughter, Extra Dark Sideral Musk, via surrogate in December 2021. And there are claims that Elon and Amber Heard had a legal battle around the crypto-preserved embryos. I mean, you could see as we're talking about this, I mean, it's just, this is crazy. In recent weeks, rumors surfaced that they had 2 more kids with their board member of OpenAI and executives at Neuralink. Sex of the babies were not disclosed, considering how busy Elon is, business ethics of such, Jayme, scroll it up, a relationship, and the fact that they are 2 babies, there is a chance that he just served as a donor. While this approach raises many ethical questions, including whether his first baby selected to be male at the pre-implantation stage, while there are regular attempts to build moral and ethical frameworks for allowing sexing for non-medical reasons, sex selection is illegal in many countries. We recently observed one of the IVF boys taking matters into his own hands, changing both name and gender, and distancing herself from her father. A very brave move, deserving recognition and support. I don't think so. I mean, once again, here goes the mainstream media just trying to demonize and play team sports. Elon Musk is not the only one opting for IVF instead of the traditional approach. Several people in my network recently told me that they chose IVF and surrogacy. Some decided to do this to improve the chances of having a healthy baby. One of my friends decided to reproduce via surrogate to have indisputed legal rights and ensure that, Jayme, his plans to invest substantial resources into the upbringing and education of their offspring do not go down in flames due to the unexpected divorce. And some choose surrogacy for health reasons. Also, there is a myriad of startups working on reproductive health and longevity, including the two I recently covered, Dr. Dina Radonvik's Gameto and Aviva. And several research groups and startups are working on artificial wombs. So that gives you the gist of what's going on. I don't think we have to really go into this anymore, fam. But you're talking about 14 kids or 13 kids, 12 of them, IVF, messing with embryos. In some situations, I don't even think he was physical or sexual with these people. A lot of people are questioning with Ashley Slan Claire if he had even was physical or had sex with her. I don't know. And the names, the way they're doing this, what's going on, it's very transhumanism-like, right? Trying to engineer a style of baby, trying to engineer the sex, the intelligence, whatnot. And this is what Elon Musk is in. Yet, meanwhile, he's running around with Donald Trump pretty much calling all the shots on what's going on in this country.
Yeah.
By the way, you're clear. So.
Oh, okay, good. But for some reason, you aren't to me. So. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I just think this really goes against the, not just the traditional values in terms of family, but in terms of what they're espousing as more natural, more healthy, more just going back to the earth, this idea that used to be part of the liberal structure that the right has now embraced. Well, everything he's pushing goes entirely against that, right? It's the complete opposite of that. You're basically genetically making babies, and you're doing it under the auspice of, well, we need more children, we need more this, we need more that. But really, almost in the way where they're trying to spread their seed in a way that is extremely, just extremely, I would say, nefarious. And you kind of have to look at it in terms of the 1% versus the 99%, right? Look at, for example, the Kardashians. They have a lot of kids, and most of them are also being had via in vitro fertilization or the renting of wombs or via surrogate. Which, look, I'm not, if you can't have a child and this is what you want to do, that's fine, but it's not because they can't. It's for cosmetic reasons. It's for designer baby reasons, and this is all happening with a lot of the elite families, and this is something to pay attention to, because while they're saying that the rest of you, and this is generally a Western perspective, right? They're saying that the rest of people need to be careful with how much electricity they're using and all of this, and how many babies you're having and all of that. They themselves are preparing to take over, it seems. And I think that goes along with the transhumanist aspect of trying to dismiss and get rid of the majority of the 99%. And then everybody else, of course, gets pushed aside. And the right generally has a resistance to that. They don't like that. They like the idea of having, lots of children and all of that. But in practice, it's very selective, and it's not necessarily for everyone. It's for those that they deem valuable. So because Elon Musk has money, because he has power, because he has all these things, they're congratulating this girl. They're congratulating Elon. They're acting like he's such a great guy for doing this. But really, it just goes against literally everything that they stand for. So once again, I'm back at the hypocrisy angle, as well as how dangerous this could potentially be.
Yeah. The hypocrisy. I'm glad you pointed it out. So many of these people, you know, once again, and this is the problem we slowly saw coming too. You know, you had the Democrats acting just beyond crazy. You know what I'm saying? Wanting to almost seem like they're trying to destroy the family values within the House, wanting the state to make decisions, and a lot of people, conservatives, saying, you know, we have to return to our Christian values. This is the sanity. This is the way. And all people like Ashley St. Clair and a lot of others out there, you know, oh my God, they always throw out their Christian values. You know, there's a lot of people out there that I'm very upset with that are playing so pro-Trump right now. That's, if you are going to be a team sports player, you are not a journalist. You are a cheerleader, you know? And these people right here, I mean, Elon Musk, I mean, holy cow. And now he's in charge of the platform where he doesn't have to show any of his homework. He doesn't have to show if it's an open source system. I mean, they're clearly suppressing people and putting certain people up and ruining others, ruining their livelihood, and they're getting away with it. And there's no more talk of that. In fact, people are cheering on JD Vance as he's going around. And this is a guy who's an ardent Zionist, once again, pushing anti-BDF laws and anti-Semitism laws to quell speech, going around acting like the Donald Trump campaign and the conservatives in the United States are the beacon of free speech. I mean, we are being played so badly, ladies and gentlemen, and we need to open our eyes.
Yep.
All right, so that's enough for this section. Let's get to the next section, fam, because I got to learn here. You got to teach us right now what's going on. Iran and the relationship. Go ahead and get started. I'm going to step out 2 seconds.
Okay. Just for some reason, the link is being annoying, but let me see if I can pull it up. 1 second. Okay. Right. So there's a couple of things geopolitically happening that I think are all interrelated, right? So you're going to have Europe freaking out right now. Europe is freaking out primarily because the United States via Trump has said that they're going to negotiate with Russia without Zelensky, without Europe. And I think Trump said this primarily just to catch points, because what's in reality, he was actually discredited or completely, it's not true. According to Rubio and according to others, that no, Zelensky will be talked to, and Europe will be eventually at the table for real negotiations. But what we're seeing, if you can pull up the actually the first one is the I believe, is it the CNN article that we have first, or is it the MSNBC? No, NBC News. Yeah, if you can just pull that one up. Okay, so it says European leaders gather for an emergency meeting after Trump shuts them out of the Ukraine talks. And like I said, Trump did this specifically because he wants to get a rise out of these people. But I think overall, it's not necessarily going to be that blatant. And well, so Saudi Arabia is being used as this go-to intermediary. And I think that's an important element to point out in all of this, in terms of why Saudi Arabia is being used in this way. Because that's going to tell us how we can look at everything else in the back end, right? So there's going to be a meeting by the European leadership on today. There is a meeting today, and they're basically going to talk about what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Europe. And Macron has come in, and this is all happening, like I said, before tomorrow, which is going to have a meeting between Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Saudi Arabia, meeting with Russian officials. Marco Rubio had a conversation with Sergei Lavrov over the phone, and they talked about that this particular discussion is going to not involve Zelensky. And once again, obviously points to the fact that Zelensky is not an empowered individual. He's a puppet, and the real people that are involved, the adults, are going to be the ones to have these conversations. And Zelensky is in the UAE right now trying to boost quote unquote humanitarian support for Ukraine. And he also said that he's not going to accept any sort of decisions or any negotiations that don't involve Ukraine and don't involve what Ukraine really wants to pursue. But everything that Ukraine wants is not going to happen. If we talk about territory, if we talk about NATO membership, that's not going to happen if Russia is actually going to make any sort of negotiation, right? And basically, who came out was Starmer came out, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, saying that England will send, the UK will send troops to fight if Ukraine needs it. Other European officials have come out and said, we're going to continue fighting if Ukraine desires that. They don't want to give in to this proposition by Vladimir Putin. They consider Putin a huge danger to Europe. But the reality is that Europe is bankrupt, that Europe got sold out and thrown and chewed and spit out by the United States. And this is a reality that Victoria Nuland talked about multiple times. And so now Saudi Arabia is being used in those negotiations, and we're going to be hearing more about that. But I think it's important to talk about the fact that Europe is not something that the United States cares about, and they've never cared about maintaining that alliance because they know that Europe is weak essentially at this point, right? And then the other element to this is that while this so-called peace negotiations are going on and everybody's praising Donald Trump for bringing a quote-unquote peace into Eurasia and having Russia and come to the table and having these diplomatic exchanges, which I believe were pretty much already planned for him to take on when he grabbed the baton from Joe Biden. We also have the other part of Donald Trump's presidency is the Zionism that is status quo. And part of this I've talked about in my article when we talk about the Abrams Shield plan. And as you can see, the United States sent a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs that already arrived in Israel. And this is after Donald Trump broke the Biden freeze. So Biden had refused to send these bombs because it so happened that Israel invaded Rafah. And so Biden had said, if you invade Rafah, we're going to pull back. We want to have a slower turnaround of events in order to allow the Palestinians to get out in time. This is what Joe Biden said. I think it was more along the lines of them wanting to maintain a semblance of some sort of humanity. But as soon as Donald Trump came in January, he actually reversed this, and he did it very quickly, but it's taken time for the shipments to come in. And so now these MK-84 2,000-pound bombs have arrived in Israel, and this was announced by the Israeli Defense Ministry. And this freeze had been in place for 9 months, right? And so this is as the IDF has been threatening to invade Gaza again due to Hamas not delivering the hostages that they want. And Hamas has said that's because Israel already violated several agreements that they had by attacking Palestinians and making it impossible for them to receive the shipments that were agreed upon the ceasefire negotiations, and allowing the trucks to come into Gaza with aid. And the Israelis have been shooting at Palestinians and basically have broken the ceasefire multiple times. So Hamas said, we're going to stop if you're going to break the ceasefire, to where Israel said, oh, if you're breaking the ceasefire, then we're going to renew our attacks against you. So this is the same thing that always happens. This is why I didn't place a lot of value into the ceasefire, because this is what Israel always does. And there's supposedly this this whole freeze began before Israel invaded Rafah, but apparently this is something that now obviously Donald Trump has decided that he was going to reverse the minute he came into office. It was actually one of the first things he did on January 20th was reverse that. So what's going to be interesting to see is, unfortunately, if Israel does go after Palestinians in terms of fully breaking the ceasefire and attacking them once again in Gaza, I don't think the Trump administration is going to oppose that. They're going to say, well, we support that. We supported that from the beginning. We back Netanyahu. And you're just going to see the continued ethnic cleansing of Palestinians while Donald Trump pushes this whole, we're going to take Gaza and we're going to build luxury residential properties and make it a tourist attraction, and Palestinians can't come in, they can't come in right away and at all for now. They're going to go somewhere else. And if Palestinians are allowed to come back in, it's going to be under the conditions that Israel and the United States want. And Saudi Arabia is being used to be this mediator in all of this, when Saudi Arabia has continuously not really backed the resistance at all. They have, of course, fully backed the West. And part of that is because of their opposition to Iran, right? And that's been the hold up the opposition to Iran and to Shia Muslims, because the majority of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the Qatar, all of the Gulf states are Sunni. However, the Palestinians, a lot of them, and the resistance are also Sunni. So there's a little bit of complexity in all of that. And Saudi Arabia can't just abandon Palestine, but it's getting more and more difficult to see a positive end to what's happening in Palestine because of that. So Pasta, I just want to get your take on some of that.
Well, I would also kind of reiterate the fact that the Saudis were signed on to the Abraham Accords, which really boosted relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but it also left the Palestinians out in the cold. So, I mean, a lot of people would also point to that being one of the reasons why we had an October 7th, and that, you know, Hamas made that last final attempt. They wanted to stop Israel and Saudi Arabia from coming to the table. I'm just very curious how it is in that country, because from what I understood, that is if they go along with what Donald Trump had talked about. And I want to make this very clear, because I've said this before. When Donald Trump says we'll take over the Gaza Strip, and he's sitting up there with Netanyahu grinning and all smiling, the guy who caused the death and the destruction, and the country that backed them, the United States, that really turned that country into the death and destruction they talked about. When he says we're going to take over the Gaza Strip, they are violating the terms of the ceasefire right there. Phase 2 is simply them pulling out, the Israelis pulling back and allowing the Palestinians to take control back of their land. So when you're talking about going in there and take over Gaza, you're already talking about violating the terms of the ceasefire in Phase 2, in which you talked about. And we said this before, fam. They never honor a ceasefire, ever. Israel never does. It's been going on since 1945, 1946. They're never going to stop. So, and I think you put it simply, that if anything is done for any type of justice for the Palestinians, it's a string cheese justice of sorts, because it's going to be under the terms of the United States and Israel, and we understand the treatment they received before. This to me is one of the reasons why, and I think Derek Bro said it on the show, fam, when we had him on last time, is that you can't side with any Zionism whatsoever, right? Because that greater Israel product, not only just imagine the greater Israel project, excuse me, not to mention the fact that when we're talking about civil liberties and freedoms of speech, you mentioned that these bombs that even the Biden administration refused to send to Israel to use, right away, Donald Trump gets in, he signs a piece of paper, they're over there now. These are really going to cause death and destruction. It's going to kill a lot of babies, a lot of mothers. That's what those bombs are going to be killed for, ladies and gentlemen, on your tax dollars. And as hard as you, as much as you want to make it a third rail so you can hero worship Donald Trump, there's going to be a lot of us out there who are going to say, no way. That's a hard red line. Absolutely not. If you're working for the Zionists, you are compromised. He signed that piece of paper lifting up the restrictions of those bombs. He also signed a piece of paper in which the Biden administration had warehoused the Pegasus spyware, right? In which the FBI was using. And he told the FBI, his administration, don't use it anymore. You're not allowed to use it. Put it in a warehouse. Well, when Donald Trump came into play, you're going to see a lot of these things that very much infringe on the Fourth Amendment, and give unbelievable, unchecked spying power on our intelligence agencies, right? This Pegasus spyware, and they made a version of it for the United States. It was also, and this was coming from the Israeli tabloids too as well, that Donald Trump has lifted those restrictions, those sanctions on those companies that make those spywares, and in particular this one, Pegasus. So now the door's open again. And I know I keep repeating this, but this stuff is so bad. If you read about this Pegasus spyware, it is awful. So I mean, every single, and I think we've pointed out before in the morning show when I was on with Steve a lot, that it wasn't collateral murder that got WikiLeaks in as much trouble as Vault 7. When they were able to show all the spying powers and the ways they can look and infringe on your civil liberties, that's when all things went south. And that's why I think, too, when you talk about Edward Snowden and the treatment that he received from Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, I think that's why a lot of people are pissed off about that, because it's the United States government committing crimes. Unfortunately, with this Trump administration, fam, we've been duped, and we've been duped at the behest of Israel, the Zionist country. I mean, we were mentioning, we were talking about Ashley St. Clair, right? And then we were talking about Elon's connections to the IDF and all that whole thing you had pointed out, who were running, were there to protect him, the Israeli connections. A lot of people were trying to buzz about the whole JFK releasing the files of the Trump administration. He's going to tell us the truth and whatnot. Well, Anna Paulina has Israeli ties. She's changed her names. She's a Zionist too as well. You think they're going to really expose what happened with JFK? And I like the fact that you have some of these conservatives out there who are like anti-Zionists who are pointing this stuff out about the letters between Ben Gurion and JFK, something we've been talking about for quite some time. JFK got David Ben Gurion, the first Israeli prime minister, to resign because he was doing nuclear weapons testing. And the what is it called? The Mossad had vowed JFK to be an enemy. You think Anna Paulina is going to release all the things that we need to be released? Remember, Donald Trump was going to release him on his first term, but he didn't do it because he didn't want to expose Israel. So it's very, very kind of interesting as we see this play along, fam. I'm wondering what people's shit lines are, right? Remember the old thing? You don't cross my shit line, I don't cross your shit line. Well, how long are people going to consent to this type of overall control of our government by Israel until they stop and say, you know what? Enough is enough. You're involved in every single aspect of our government, and you decide on what we have to say and when we can say it. Not only that, we don't have Medicare in our country for our citizens. You do, on our dollar. You know what I'm saying? You have good infrastructure. You have everything looks beautiful out there on our dollar. We give you money to defend yourselves. We have people homeless in the streets, but yet we provide you billions of dollars. Donald Trump signed over $7 billion in weapons and aid to Israel. What could that $7 billion do at home? This is crazy. Right. And so many people are just playing along over here. What resistance do we have, ladies and gentlemen? None, if you ask me.
It's interesting when people talk about the immigrants taking this and that. Well, what about Israel and the billions that they've taken, right? And the same thing with the Ukrainian fascists in Donbass, obviously, but that one is easily understood. But once you put the situation against, Muslims, then that's why you saw a lot of people not get Israel-Palestine right because of that. And Zionism is ingrained in so many countries, not just the United States. It's everywhere. It's in Russia, it's in the US, it's all over Europe, all over the UK. You have that Zionism, and it seems to be that one thing that most politicians get wrong by default because they can't talk about it, or they have some allegiance to Israel in one form or another. And this is now becoming more apparent with the other element of the two things that I've talked about. So obviously Russia, Ukraine, there's a mediation going on. Donald Trump is going to meet with Vladimir Putin. You have Marco Rubio, who is meeting, I believe, if not with one of his, I think he's meeting with Lavrov, and there are others that are there with him as well So that's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you have the United States continuing its expansion of Greater Israel along with Israel and attacking the Palestinians using Saudi Arabia. And now you have the third factor, which if this happens, if there is anything between Iran and Saudi Arabia that's beyond, that's deeper than superficial diplomatic talk, if something in terms of Iran giving in and pivoting towards the Gulf instead of the resistance, that will be just a complete ultimate betrayal of everything for Palestine. That'll be the complete total selling of Palestine, because Hezbollah and Nasrallah and the rest of the resistance really have relied on Iran for a lot of reasons. Iran is a potent country. It's more powerful. It has weapons. It has an army, military-wise, right? And I talked about before the difference between the Russian and Iranian treaty versus the Russian and North Korean one. And now you have this last part to this section is that Saudi Arabia is seeking to mediate between Trump and Iran on a new nuclear deal. Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabia that, as Pasta said, supported the Abraham Accords, and the Saudi Arabia that has continuously undermined Iran, undermined Syria, the Saudi Arabia that Bashar al-Assad pivoted towards at the advisement of Russia. This is, I mean, according to what the sources that I'm getting and a lot of what's now being released. And the Saudi Arabia that's now obviously fully backing the United States in Israel, except on, of course, they're demanding a Palestinian state. Will they get it? I don't think so. And even if they do, what kind of state will that be? It'll be Israeli controlled, clearly. And so now Saudi Arabia is being pushed to mediate between Trump and Iran to have Iran agree to a nuclear program, right? But nobody talks about the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons. This is largely known by the resistance, and it's not admitted openly by Israel or any of its allies. But Israel is, of course, looked on as less of a danger than Iran. You had Marco Rubio say that Iran is the greatest threat to the world recently. And so clearly, this to me seems like an attempt to bring Iran in and have them give into some sort of treaty that disempowers them, and to turn Iran away from its resistance factions, its proxies, it's the closest people to them, turn them towards the Gulf, thereby disempowering the resistance. And now you have the ability for Greater Israel to continue. Now, the other side of that is that will Iran bite? Because you seem to have a schism there between the Pezeshkian faction, the liberal reformist types that support the president, Pezeshkian. And then you have the Ayatollah, you have the supporters of that, the supreme leader, that support not negotiating with the United States under a nuclear deal, that are saying, no, we're not going to even look at this. Obviously, supposedly, the Imam has the most power and will ultimately make the final decision. But what I'm seeing in Iran is the potential for infiltration, if it hasn't happened already. What I'm seeing in Iran is the potential for that to pivot in that direction if they're not careful. And I would hope that that's not the case, that, you know, they don't abandon their ideals, because you have very small factions fighting for an ideological truth, right? So fighting against their oppressors, fighting against the people, the Israeli Zionist entity that's oppressing them, fighting against all of that. But then you have the pragmatic countries and Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, Russia, Turkey. Now that's now revitalized potential relations with the new Syria, and Russia, which is looking to building more pipelines, via Turkey, apart from the Black Sea grain corridor. So you have all of that happening, and that's diametrically opposed to the fight of the resistance, because the resistance is the only thing keeping Israel from expanding. And then, if there's an offering of, well, we're going to end the sanctions, we're going to restore diplomatic relations, economic relations with you, Iran, Tehran, if that's the conversation that's being had, and there's a desire for normalization, as what we see happening in Russia, with Russia and the United States, this is where I think we're going. And people are going to call that multipolarity, and we're being fed that is this diplomatic, peaceful making mission, but really it's selling out the Palestinians in an effort to bring some sort of false peace. So that's essentially what I see happening. And I think a lot of people are going to come to a rude awakening that a lot of the countries and people, that politicians and entities that they have put on a pedestal, are falling apart. And for me, coming from, years of long ago supporting Bernie Sanders and these politicians, I've learned not to put any of them on a pedestal. And I've learned to really look at things from a clear journalist perspective. But for the people that are talking about multipolarity and all of this in a very rose-colored way, I think it's going to be a rude awakening when that doesn't come out to be what they thought it was.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. You want to talk about now, all of a sudden, the renewed energy from the Saudis. Well, MBS, who's the leader of that country, right, who kind of like was a cousin, was in the line, forced his way into power, mafia style, had the backing of Jared Kushner, right? He's good friends with Jared Kushner. Well, there was also a picture of MBS on the wall of Epstein. You start thinking about, Elon and all these people. It's the same characters, guys, over and over again, and they force us to take these things. I'm just blown away by how so many people are just hero worshiping him. They're talking about the NED, the USAID, as if those NGOs made decisions separate of what's going on in the government. No, it was always the government foreign apparatus that made the decisions. They just used those NGOs at their will. And those NGOs were particularly specifically, the PR firms for regime change. And you hear a lot of that language around nowadays too, as well. And if Trump was such that, there was somebody in the chat, and before we get to the next thing, talking about, they want to talk about reducing the military by 50%. Do you guys really believe that shit? They're not going to do that. They're fooling you. They're going to spend money in other places. It's a new military coming forth, right? It's going to be about AI and whatnot. And watch how much money they send backdoor to all these other places that aren't listed as defense. They'll get around it, and you better believe it. If Donald Trump was serious about getting rid of nuclear weapons, then why in his first administration did he not renew the signature of the nuclear treaty with Russia? That they had a nuclear treaty about jets, planes carrying certain nuclear weapons on them. He let it expire. That was the thing that Tulsi Gabbard was on the floor going crazy about. Remember? We just forgot about those things. Donald Trump is not your savior. He's not an outsider. He's there to do what the elites want him to do, especially the elites from Zion.
No president is your savior. No. Like, at the end of the day, they all have more in common with each other than they have, than you or somebody else from X country have. I mean, we all have more in common with Palestinians than we do with any of the governing entities that people want to put on a pedestal, no matter who they are. And I think there's a difference. Again, leadership, governors, people in power look at the ends, and they often think the ends justify the means, whereas when you're on the other side, that's not always the case. For me, I don't believe that's nearly the case nearly ever. I mean, I don't like to make unilateral statements, but for me, it's usually no, because by the time you get there, and you're trying to do some good by doing so many terrible things, and what's the purpose? And at this point, what have you achieved? And I think the geopolitical world right now, for the most part, is aiming to sell out Palestinians and aiming to use them to establish some sort of normal relations in the Middle East. And, the worst part is Israel will never be apart from the United States. This is something that Russia needs to understand. Turkey will never stop being a part of NATO. So again, another thing to understand for Eurasia. And in regard to China, the United States will turn on them at any given second. And I think what we're seeing now, Pasta, to lead into the next part, is not just a war militarily, that and a pivot towards China and Iran, towards focusing on them and taking them down. But we're also seeing a psychological war online, and how all of this is happening online, and the capturing of media online, and the capturing of independent alternative viewpoints, and taking them and warping them in a way for the establishment to continue its reach, and to continue, expanding its tentacles abroad, and giving people these carrots, and giving people these things like what you said, the cutting military spending in half, and people saying, wow, that's so great. No president has ever said that in my lifetime. Yeah. Well, yeah, he's saying it for a reason, because this is now, you've been captured. The ideas of anti-establishment, of even revolutionary ideas of taking on the 1%, the elites. Notice how it was used to be the 1% predator class. Now it's the Democratic globalists. So now it's just only the Democrats, right? Yeah. It's the Republicans never did anything wrong. So they take the anti-imperialist sentiments, they rehash it, and then they use it against you by completely warping them into acceptance of the status quo. But you don't realize it, because they're giving you these little candies and they're throwing them, and you're walking towards the slaughter, but you're also being fed these really nice, juicy steaks or cookies, whatever it is that you people like. And and while you're walking there, you don't realize that by the time you get there, you're done. And I think that's what's happening. And it's kind of crazy, because I sense another mass formation psychosis happening, kind of like the way I felt during COVID, when everybody lost their mind. I feel like that now. And I feel like I'm living in a different reality than a lot of people online, where I'm just seeing like, what exactly are you seeing right now? Because that's not what I'm seeing. I don't know. It's very warped and weird.
Yeah. I'm going to go find it. There's a lot of things to unpack over here too as well. I think that T. Snyder said it best, and on the morning show AM Wake Up, we're going to find it, is like, this is what the system is designed to do: give you these little emotional victories that really don't have any what's the word I'm looking for? Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
I don't know why this microphone just went this way. It just bugged out on me. But it's designed to give you these little emotional victories, to think that you have a sense of freedom, while zombie walking you back into the enslavement that you really are. That's the reality of what you are really in. So, I mean, this is happening with Donald Trump. I mean, just to seeing these people out there, and they've been setting this up for a while, fam. Everything you're seeing was meant to happen. It's going along as planned, ladies and gentlemen, from the oligarchs. Just know that it's going along as planned. So, I think that we have to look deeper into what's going on. I love the fact that you brought this to the table. And the Palestinians, I mean, what they've endured, and a lot of that is coming out of our hard-earned tax dollars, and people need to understand that. And it's kind of disgusting. Watch them making it like a third rail over here, as if it's, it's just one issue. It's not one issue. Genocide, ethnic cleansing is not one issue, and they're continuing to do this. I mean, Donald Trump coming in and saying, we'll take over the Gaza Strip. That's probably one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard in politics ever. So let's read these two Rumble rants too as well, because there's a lot of talk in the chat about things going on too as well. But show this Rumble rant real quickly so we could definitely. This is Rumble rant, and this is over from LAUG Log 66. $7. Cool. He was $5 and $2 together. Hysterical tears of a clown. Christopher Hugson is truly pathetic, and all these European in leadership positions are poison. They are evil. They need to be disgraced and called out whenever they dare appear in public. This is it right here. Let's take a quick look.
With Ewald von Kleist, this conference started as a transatlantic conference. After the speech of Vice President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. I'm very grateful to all those European politicians that spoke out and reaffirmed the values and principles that they are defending. No one did this better than President Zelensky. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
right. Jeez,
So this is coming from also the
wow.
fact that JD Vance made a speech and said that, censorship is going to make it difficult for us. Impeding free speech is going to make it difficult for the United States and Europe to have a relationship. But the thing with Republicans is, and people on the Trump sphere, is they literally want to deport anybody or arrest people who are speaking against Zionism. So while I agree with JD Vance in the fact that these people are idiots and they're so, they're so quick to feel the victims of XYZ, whatever, as somebody else says, and they want to impede and censor speech. That's true. And I'm entirely against that. But on the other end of the spectrum, they do it too. So again, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, you can recognize that these European politicians, especially the liberal ones, are complete and total failures. They're total frauds, and they are fascists for trying to keep people from speaking their mind and trying to just make free speech a crime. The right is doing the same thing when it comes to speech that they want to protect, when it comes to speech they don't like, when it comes to anti-Zionist sentiments, when it comes to giving Israel the benefit of the doubt all the time. So I just need to point that out, because if we don't point out both sides of the hypocrisy, I think we're doing a disservice to what actually is the truth.
And the Europeans and that jerk off to go have the crying little thing going on after he's perpetrated death and destruction, and trying to make Zelensky look at this freedom fighter as opposed to just what's really happening. This is a color revolution brought on by the United States, the West, and its allies. Hundreds of thousands, if not close to 1 million people are dead because of it. And they can try to talk in circles about it. And still, I mean, watching Bill Maher this week, fam, too, as well. Like I think I told you the other day, the article we're going to jump into next, I got to read after watching about 65-70% of Bill Maher. And it was really just disheartening. Tim Ryan was on, ex-senator, the one who lost to J.D. Vance running for Senate. And they were asking him, and hills to die on, would you die on this? And one of the questions was Ukraine-Russian. He's like, yes, this is a hill to die on, because if we allow Vladimir Putin to go and reclaim or re-invite, or whatever word he used, try to recapture the old Soviet Union, we'll all be living in chains and stuff. The fact that they're still trying to sell this and then getting applauses from that audience, it's really disheartening at times. So, I mean, it's just... It's full-fledged attack. I do want to address one thing right now in the audience. Right now, people are talking. Listen, you've heard out there was a couple people making criticism about people from different ideologies having someone across the aisle on their show. It's not about who you have on the show. And I don't want to hear anything, ladies and gentlemen. You're looking at me and Fiorella, who've been into talking to people a long time ago. We were showing up at Trump rallies, and we're the only leftists that would ever dare go in there and do that and talking to people. So, it's not so much when you have somebody on, right? That's the problem. It's the questions that are asked. And unfortunately, there's a lot of leftists out there right nowadays playing softball, not really asking the questions, not doing their homeworks. Fam, you sent me a tweet from somebody, and I was like, okay, this guy is praising this guy over here. And it's like he hasn't done his homework over the year. I mean, people need to start doing their homework. And if you're going to have somebody on a different ideology, if there's money connected to certain people, certain questions need to be asked, right? You can see the way when I asked Vivek Ramaswamy certain questions, he ran away. He literally ran away from me, ladies and gentlemen. One question, that's it. He's gone. But he'll go on other shows that might be of different ideology because it's a safe space. So it's not so much about who you have on. It's the questions you ask that is most important. And that's what we have to pay attention to in media moving forward. We also talked last week. Thank you, fam. We also talked last week about, when we were talking with Gerald Celente. Gerald Celente thinks that maybe Donald Trump is going to start up a war with Iran. We talked about the reformist that is there, that we might move away from it. We definitely said there's going to be a swing towards Latin America. Our good friend Terry Mattson, who will be back hopefully doing WTF, what the F is going on in Latin America. She does a lot of trips with us. She's been on the ground with us in Nicaragua, in Honduras, which Honduras is coming up this year. She wrote an article and she put it out in Anti-War blog, and it talks about what's going on. Now, the only thing I would add to this to really solidify, it says the Trump administration inherits Southcom's expansion in Latin America and the Caribbean. That's by Terry Mattson on February 14th. This article is great. I have it pinned up. Jayme, if you can put it in the chat too. Well, it's a quick read. It's unlike my friend Gloria and Fee when they write an article. It's like a book. You might as well just pick up a book and read it. Just publish a book next time, fam. Please.
Whitney Webb's are longer.
Do us a favor, the three of you guys. Just publish books. This is a short read. It's quick. It's compartmentalized very well. It's to the point and gives you a lot of information. Here it is. The only thing I would say, too, about the expansion that is inherited, it's not so much that it's inherited, fam. It's like the passing of the baton. It's given in to Donald Trump. Donald Trump's going to take that baton and run with it. That's what's going on. He's doing that with Israel right now, right? He's picking up the pieces. It's not like like I said, all this is planned. Everything is going as planned for the ruling class. During her tenure as commander of the U.S. Southern Command, Southcom, from October 2021 to her retirement in November 2024, General Laura J. Richardson, fam's favorite person, oversaw a significant expansion of U.S. military presence and strategic alliances in Latin America and the Caribbean. This initiative reflects Washington's continued influence in the region, reinforcing a modern interpretation of the Monroe Doctrine aimed at maintaining U.S. dominance over hemispheric affairs, particularly concerning natural resources, trade routes, and geopolitical stability with the U.S. rules-based order paradigm. Now, the only thing I would really put there in addition to that is assured usage of the monetary system, of the Western monetary system. In other words, there's a lot of people who talk about what's going on as far as what's being concerned is about why there's so much migration. And there's a lot of talk about the UN, right? The UN putting fuel on the fire. Diane Sayre and Jose Vega, when they went to talk to people in New York and they asked them about why there is so much of this, the UN kind of pushing and promoting this stuff. When she asked people who were here, migrants, they said, well, Biden told us to come and we had some help to come. Then they completely exacerbate the system of the hotels in New York and other states, putting 4 or 5 people in the room, but the hotel rooms are able to charge top dollar and get all that money. So, yeah, there is some fuel on the fire, but it's still here in this article, which is very, very important. Natural resources. We talk about resource extraction. A lot of people want to move away from that. And they're like, oh, really? It's that? No, when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution, which we are talking about, this new age, what the WEF is trying to push in there, the Great Reset, whatnot, they want all these track and trace systems into play. Well, there are 3 resources that are very much needed, that are very much, I should say, vibrant in Latin America, and that is cobalt, nickel, and lithium. They need that. They want that. That meaning the oligarchs of the West. They need to get it. So that's why we see a lot of dominance in Latin America, and we can see this reigniting, right, revisiting our presence, Monroe Doctrine style, in Latin America, especially when we see a lot of these governments that are standing up for their national sovereignty and want to maintain control of their own country rather than being told what to do from the West. That's going to be reignited right now. That's going to happen more than ever, and that's why we're looking at what's been going on. What Joe Biden did, when you see this first sentence right here, this first paragraph, is he set the table up for Donald Trump to come on in. So let me read this next section over here, and you guys tell me what you think. But those resources, they need that resources. Also, when we talk about the monetary system, fam can tell you, whatever country you go to, the American dollar can still be used. That's something that the West wants to do. They want to make sure that they put these loans on top of these countries, these IMF loans, and when they can't pay or default, they take it back in resources. And the best way to extract resources for cheap is to keep the countries destabilized as possible. If the country is very poor and destabilized, you can take the resources for pennies on the dollar, i.e. Haiti, what's going on in Peru, what's going on in all these other countries. That's also part of the game. Colombia, with 7 military bases, 2 naval, 3 Air Force, 2 Army. Colombia remains one of the closest U.S. military partners in the region. Under Richardson, fam's favorite general, joint operations, training exercises, and infrastructure investments increased. ensuring U.S. influence over the country's energy and mineral resources. Once again, they don't want to give it up to the people. Jayme, you can scroll all the way up for me. They don't want to give it up to the people. They want to make sure they control it itself, keep the country very poor, get the resources for pennies on the dollar. 7 bases in Colombia. We also want to point out, ladies and gentlemen, that Colombia is the only Latin American country that has NATO membership, a special NATO status. Why would a country in Latin America and South America need to have a NATO status when NATO is all about protecting the borders in Europe? It's crazy. And 7 bases now. Ecuador. In 2023, the U.S. secured a security cooperation agreement with Ecuador, deploying military personnel and resources to combat narcotics trafficking and organized crime within Ecuador. Yeah, if there's anybody else who's not going through the CIA or the DEA, they're on their turf. Those other cartels that are trying to get around it, that's the business of the DEA and the CIA. They own that money. Don't screw with them. It's like a mafia, a cartel itself. They will not allow anybody else. So when they kind of sell this as they're stopping this narco trafficking, no, they're making sure they have no competition, and they're the ones who control the drug trade. Discussions ensued about developing a new security cooperation site, reinforcing U.S. oversight and regional security and economic interest. Additionally, U.S. gained access to the Galapagos Islands for military operations, expanding maritime control in the Pacific. This is something else to point out, too, as well. When we talk about Nicaragua possibly having a canal going through there, when we talk about Donald Trump's all of a sudden reigniting the thought process about getting back and taking back the Panama Canal, that's about controlling these maritime routes, expanding these routes, making sure that they control that. Because if you control the maritime routes, right, if you control how things are shipped and goods and services moved around, a big push-up back, fam, against the Silk Road of China, then you can control a lot of the goods and services that are moved around. The United States controls those routes. They want to continue to control those routes. Guyana. Amid Washington-provoked tensions with Venezuela, the U.S. bolstered military collaboration with Guyana. In late 2023, Southcom conducted joint operations with Guyana's Defense Force, including air and maritime security exercises, reinforcing ties and this key oil-producing nation. Once again, they're in debt to us. Jayme, you can move it all the way to the top for Peru. They're in debt with us. We control their resources. We act like we're going in there, we're doing these drills, we're going to help you with your security. And really, it's about just showing our presence in that area, especially to the Chinese and the Russians who do have ties in Latin America. Peru. In May 2023, amid social unrest following a paramilitary coup against Pedro Castillo, and FAM covered that election, Peru's Congress approved the deployment of U.S. troops to train the Peruvian military and national police. The measure continued a tradition of U.S. military training in the region, a practice dating back to the 1990s when FAM's favorite dictator, Fujimori, when the U.S. Southcom maintained multiple bases in the country. So far, fam, I got you good friends with Fujimori and the general here. I know you like them. But, I mean, fam, you remember this. They were trying to change their constitution. They were trying to nationalize and take back a lot of their natural resources. Peru sits on the lithium triangle. The United States is not going to let that happen. That's why they not only jailed Pedro Castillo, but they've jailed so many Peruvian presidents beforehand that tried to nationalize those resources so the people of those countries can get the benefits from it. They'll never allow it. The United States wants it, and they re-solidified that those kind of same practices in Peru with that move. Deepening alliances and military partnership. Beyond physical expansion, Southcom intensified diplomatic and military engagement through security agreements, joint training programs, and the capacity building initiatives, solidifying U.S. hegemony while ensuring continued access to strategic resources and trade routes. National Guard State Partnership Program, a fiscal year 2024, Southcom and the National Guard engaged in over 300 FAM joint military activities with partner nations, strengthening defense cooperations and crisis response capabilities. Panama, recognizing Panama's strategic importance in 2022, General Richardson reaffirmed commitments to securing the Panama Canal, enhancing joint security measures to ensure control over this critical global trade corridor. Fam, let's get your opinions on what we're hearing so far as the trade routes, as far as the military practices, as far as going in and pretty much taking away national sovereignty from these countries.
Yeah, so as Terry points out in her article, this is the continuity, right? You had Joe Biden establish, and even before Joe Biden, during the Trump administration, and then Obama before that, and so on and so forth, you had the establishment of this Monroe Doctrine type of relationship with Latin America. And we have seen throughout, for example, the US-backed coup under the Donald Trump administration in Bolivia. We saw the attempted coup against Venezuela, which Marco Rubio was a huge part of, pushing Guaido and pushing the anti-Venezuela sentiment and completely ignoring the immigration process of that under Donald Trump, and using the U.S. aid. He went down to the border between Colombia and Venezuela to send aid, actual United States aid to Venezuelans, using that, of course, to push the opposition to turn against Maduro. We have seen them ramp up the terrorist status against Cuba, the sanctions and blockade, continue that. And then when it came to before the previous Trump administration, we had Barack Obama. We had the overthrowing of Manuel Zelaya in 2009, right? So now we're back. We're back now. We have this year, we have an election in Honduras. We have an election in Bolivia. And we have next year Nicaragua. And I think, I forget who else, but there's several elections in Latin America. There was just one in Ecuador as well. So there's a lot going on in Latin America. And unfortunately, very much like the Middle East, the resistance of the Middle East, we're seeing Latin America be attacked. And this is one of the areas where people are going to overlook because everybody's focused right now on what's happening over there. And this is also an attack, a combined attack, not just against the Latin American sovereign nations, especially the resistance nations. And I think we're going to see Honduras be very much in focus because Xiomara Castro has been resisting a lot of the U.S. attempts to intervene. And there has also been that relationship with China. And this is a double-pronged approach here, while attacking these Latin American nations, or in one way or another, whether it's through threats, through intervention, or through subjugation, meaning forcing them to comply. You're also attacking China because China has largely done business with a lot of these Latin American countries. In Peru, you're seeing it in Honduras, you're seeing it in Nicaragua, and they were trying with Panama. And the United States is threatened by this. And I think Terry does talk about that in her article. The United States is threatened by China coming into the region. So in this way, they are also attacking China. They want to isolate China away from any of this. They see China as an economic threat as well as a military threat and a technological threat. And so this isn't just about Latin America and the resources, which, yes, it's true, but it's also about beating China in the technological sector, because China's relationship with Latin America is much more diplomatic than the unilateral relationship the United States has, that there's a lot of resources and minerals that China can get its hands on as well to use to continue beating the United States in this war. So that's also part of that fourth industrial revolution aspect, that they're looking at China. And again, like, this Latin America just sits in between all of that. And I think this is why you're seeing attempts for them to normalize relations with Venezuela in order to continue building their hold in Latin America, and to also just obviously exploit the natural resources there. And if these countries go down one by one, if we see the last bastions, whether it's Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, of this strong red tide, is the actual resistance of Latin America, well, I think you're just going to see a very, very negative and weakened Latin America that becomes a victim to the same thing that we're seeing happen, elsewhere. So I hope not, but it's looking that's like their intent.
Jayme, put up the Trump administration continuity under the Trump administration.
Continuity.
What's that?
Continuity, yeah.
Continuity. Sorry, I said continuing. Continuity. Thank you so much. As the Trump administration approaches its first 30 days, it inherits extensive military infrastructure and regional alliances expanded under the Biden administration and U.S. Southern Command. This creates a policy continuum in U.S. Latin American relations, perhaps dictating Donald Trump's strategic objectives. The selection of Marco Rubio as Secretary of State and Peter Hegseth as Secretary of Defense suggests an acceleration with the continuum. Rubio's focus on countering China and its Western Hemisphere allies, which you just mentioned, may lead to increased diplomatic and economic initiatives and or threats in the region. Meanwhile, Hegseth's emphasis on reducing European security commitments could shift U.S. military resources towards the Western Hemisphere. These developments suggest a potential strategic shift related to the Obama administration's Asia-Pacific pivot, if you remember that, further emphasizing U.S. military infrastructures and alliances in Latin America and the Caribbean. It is important to view U.S. Latin American policy as a timeline of events spanning multiple administrations. Under the Biden administration and General Richardson, Pam's favorite general, Southcom significantly expanded U.S. military bases and alliances in Latin America and the Caribbean. This expansion underscores Washington's long-term strategic objectives of countering foreign influence, securing trade routes, and maintaining military dominance in the Western Hemisphere. With the Trump administration now inheriting this military expansion, the trajectory of U.S. engagement in the region is poised to continue raising critical questions about national sovereignty, resource control, and long-term regional stability. I thought it was a great article, fam. I think she just laid it on out about what's going on, why it's happening. It's just one administration passing the baton to another administration. We're going to see more of this. And like I said, because of the fourth industrial revolution and the Great Reset and all those things that are needed, the track and trace systems, the digital prisons that are being built for you, ladies and gentlemen, we need the cobalt, nickel, and lithium. So look for us to continue to dominate in that region and to extract those resources for pennies on the dollar. It's like Nico House says, fam, the safest place is behind the gun. And the one who lives behind the gun lives forever. Something like that. It's Kendrick's song. I think it's the one in front of the gun lives forever, but it's just not the way it's supposed to be.
Fam, did you have something to say about my favorite president, Javier Milei? My favorite libertarian?
I mean, I did have some stuff in that there, but we don't have enough time to go through that. But it looks as if, fam, that Javier Milei is getting arrested. it looks, I don't know. We got to confirm it. Go ahead and put that up from Javier Milei. He's a libertarian. Whoa, this guy, Elon Musk, has been boasting hard libertarian agenda. Argentina president, Javier Milei, just arrested for running a massive crypto scam for his pump and dump meme coin. So he was arrested, fam. He's let BlackRock and State Street in the door. He's been the hardcore pro-Zionist, backing the Israeli nation, whatever they want, right? He's freaking pro-Ukraine. He's pulled out of BRICS. And everybody wants to say, hey, this guy's doing so great. Please.
Yeah.
So we'll see more about that, what's going on over there. I just want to point out while we're talking about Latin America, I thought it was important to point out. And also, too, what's going on in Haiti, where a lot of these kids, I mean, we've been caught in a little bit of a crossfire from a Haiti theory, a discussion out there. Dozens of Haiti children caught up in the crossfire of gang violence. They've destabilized that country because they want to go get that what is it called out there? Iridium that's in the mountains. And there's a lot of other resources in the mountains of Hades and stuff, and they want them for pennies on the dollar. So, you know, poor kids. But, you know, once again, let's deport them all, fam. They're the problem.
Yeah. Haiti is one of the toughest, I think, displays of just complete and total U.S. hegemony. I mean, at every turn, we've interfered and overthrown and pushed violence to just control the island and continue it being destabilized. And there's so many resources there. I interviewed wonderful person on that. If you guys want to check it out, I think it's in my Rumble. And she talks a lot about the intricacies and the nuances between Jimmy Barbecue and different aspects of it. So she's Haitian. So yeah, it'd be good to look at her.
And that's why I got so offended with Donald Trump. They're eating the cats and dogs. He was trying to imply that Haitians are doing that. The Haitians do that. And I lost my shit. Right now, I have a Haitian woman inside right there taking care of my mom. In the South Florida community, all the nursing homes and stuff, the predominant person working there is a Haitian person, right? Mm-hmm. They do so much for our society. They help us out so much. I mean, so many old people would fall by the wayside if it wasn't for the Haitian community that's out here. And they're awesome people. They're loving people. So for Donald Trump to demonize them, meanwhile turning a blind eye at what's going on, the complete destabilization of Haiti from the Clinton administration to his administration, it's disgusting, right? You know, and it's all about, once again, resource extraction. But I also believe, fam, there's something more when it comes to Haiti. I think it's part of the, it's like a punishment for the Bolivarian Revolution. On top of things, the ruling class wants to let Haitians know that they should never, ever try to rebel ever again. So they get a hard fist. How many times have we cooed, you know, their leaders? Aristide cooed twice. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, it's ridiculous what's going on. So I like to point it out that it was disgusting what Donald Trump said. And for people to be so xenophobic to think that these are the real reasons, the real problems we have here in the United States, a little bit crazy. Tomorrow I'll be on Due Dissidence, fam, rocking it over there, 2 p.m. Eastern with Keaton. On Wednesday, I have Drive Time, of course, as well. You can check that out. It's the call-in show. Jayme did great work over there. It was a picture taken by my good friend, Omar. It's WBAI 99.5. It's the greater area of New York, 4 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. You can call on in if you like. You can call in from wherever you're at. Come check it out. Thursday, Matt will be back from assignment. Friday, me and Fam will be back on. And hopefully we'll have some cool guests. You got anything else to talk about right now, Fam, before we get on out?
Just look out for another Substack article, this time shorter, on Russia, U.S. relations for those people who have a hard time reading. And also look out for a surprise coming from me, and look out for another talk I did with Vanessa Beeley on a lot of different things about Israel. And there was a lot of technical difficulties while we were having these conversations, which is kind of telling. And today there was just in general a lot of technical difficulties. I don't know if Mercury is in Gatorade or something, but it's
just ridiculous too as well that if you look at Rumble and it's clean, but if you look at YouTube, it's all messed up. We don't have any transparency in our media and what's going on right now, and that's the biggest danger right now, because these guys are parading around, the Trump administration and their little minions parading around like they're the free speech warriors. We don't have free speech, ladies and gentlemen. Things are censored, things are demonetized, and we got a WEF freak running around doing shit and acting once again like he's everybody's savior out there, and Elon Musk. No, he's compromised. He's owned by the Israelis. He's owned by the IDF and the Mossad. Call it like it is. Balls and strike, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to the TruthWire. We'll see you soon. Truth out.
No. We'll see you next time.
Truth out.
No.
Mercury and Gatorade.